Welcome back, WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and WNST.net. Birthday week, homecoming week, Baltimore positive week, and a trip to Seattle where, in honor of Seattle and coffee, I'm wearing my Royal Farms Real Fresh, Real Fast, but I'm wearing the Chicken Palooza shirt, but they do have some Kona Blend over there to get your day going. Joining us now on the Lee Tessier Team Hotline, Luke Jones, Arkeem Asabi. He will be out in Owings Mills all week long, watching the Ravens get ready for Russell Wilson and a bye and Tom Brady, and, of course, watching Lamar Jackson get prepared to go out to Seattle and the 12th man and the Legion of Earl Thomas and all of that. Kind of a weird week here to get to the bye, but more than that, Luke, the first place Baltimore Ravens. And, look, we could do residue with the Cincinnati game that ended a little closer than maybe we would have wanted and where they were last week, but moving forward, seeing the Steelers win, seeing the Browns, look, maybe they're, allergic to the color purple or something, I don't know, but the Browns have looked awful the last 2 weeks. Maybe not awful against Seattle, but not, first-place Browns. We're the first-place team. This is an interesting thing, and I think over the last 6 months, to look at all the hype the Browns got, to see what happened to the Steelers with Roethlisberger, then they go out to Carson and beat a team that I think many of us liked in the summer and don't like so much now in powder blue. New England's still great, right? And they're there, but there are a lot of surprises around the league right now.
Yeah, and I think there's still that sorting out process of just who is real, who are the pretenders, who's had a tough schedule and is going to rebound down the stretch or the second half of the season, and who are the teams that have gotten fat on lesser competition, and their reality is going to set in at some point. And certainly you can mention the Ravens in some of those descriptors, but I think you look at how this has played out to this point. You love where the Ravens are in the AFC North, not necessarily because of the Ravens, but because of how the rest of the division looks. But you just look around right now, and New England at 6-0. They've played a really easy schedule, like the Ravens. So are they 2007 Patriots good, or more of the run-of-the-mill, non-Super Bowl winning kind of year for the Patriots? I think that's a fair question at this point, especially when you
depends if Lamar Jackson can go up there and beat him. It depends, right? It depends if Pat Mahomes can go there and win when he's not gimpy, right?
Right.
That's what it's setting up for. You're going to have to go to New England and win if you want to go to Miami, right? And that's for any of these AFC teams. And we're going to find out all about that in 2 weeks, aren't we?
Exactly. So it's funny. You look at New England right now, and I think there's some questions about their offense. Anyone who watched them play the Giants on Thursday night, which was not a particularly entertaining game, but it ended up being closer than people thought it might be, for at least a good portion of that game. But they're kind of what to the AFC, what the Ravens are to the AFC North right now. I don't know if New England's truly a 6-0 absolute juggernaut that the rest of the league's going to cower with fear over, although certainly they're in the heads of every other team that's chasing them. They always are to some degree, but they have a 2-game lead on everyone. And the Ravens in the AFC North specifically, I'm not sure just how good the Ravens are right now. I think there's a lot of unknown there, but they have a 2-game lead on everyone else in the division. And for as much as you have questions about the Ravens, you have much bigger questions about the Browns. You have much bigger questions about the Steelers. And while the Bengals, they're 0-6 already. They're done. So it really does set up nicely for the Ravens. And when you look at this entire AFC, I think you look at the quality top to bottom and compare it to the NFC, even if the Cowboys have come back to earth with 3 straight losses, and Philadelphia's 3-3, and you can kind of look at some other teams, and the Rams are a great example of that. They've lost 3 in a row now, but I think the overall quality in the NFC, it looks like a much deeper conference than the AFC. But hey, you still have to win the same number of games to get to the Super Bowl, and even if the AFC doesn't stack up quite as favorably to the NFC, that's a good thing for a team like the Ravens, who at 4-2 and having a 2-game lead in the division, it's setting up very well for them to at least get in the tournament, and then you see what happens after that. So, long way to go. I mean, I'm getting ahead of myself talking in those terms, but it's tough not to look at this division and look at the entire AFC and at least say, I might not be able to make a great argument for the Ravens, but I'm not necessarily able to make a good argument against them. That's how wide open this thing feels, with everyone chasing New England, and even New England at 6-0, understanding that there's a little bit of some of that question that we're talking about with the Ravens that you can apply to them. They've had a strength of schedule very similar to the Ravens, except they've taken care of business in each one of theirs.
It is fascinating looking at the rest of the schedule because it came out in April, right? And we had the bye in the middle, all these 1 o'clock games. I don't know that it could have been a more perfect sort of schedule on paper. And then you look at it and you say, well, Buffalo in December, well, they're never any good. The 49ers, they've stunk, like Houston, who knows what they're going to be. Now that you get into this, and we are sort of at the halfway point, and as much as we're trying to figure out what we are, I've watched these other teams play, and I know I'd rather be playing the Dolphins. I'd rather be playing the Redskins, I'd rather be playing the Bengals, which we just did and struggled enough with this week. I know these are the better teams, and when I looked up and I saw New England and Kansas City and Houston this week, I saw, well, those are all the first-place teams. Oh, we're playing them. Oh, that's right. We hosted a playoff game here last year. We were a first-place team. This is kind of what you get, and I don't know what Buffalo represents up there, and I think we've seen a little bit of Houston and where Deshaun Watson is, which looks a little bit more like the first year than the second year, and him coming back from the injury and all that stuff. This schedule is not kind moving forward. We looked at Cleveland's schedule a couple of weeks ago and we saw them. It's like, oh, man, they got a tough schedule coming up, and look at who they have to play. Now it's poor us all of a sudden with Seattle bye and Tom Brady and then Cincinnati and then 4 weeks of a real gauntlet around Thanksgiving. I mean, don't load up on the pumpkin pie, man.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, there's no way to really sugarcoat it. I mean, this is going to be a challenge, and that's a good thing. Well, I'm kind of getting tired of talking about the Ravens in a term of, okay, they got a win, they played a really bad team. Let's find out. Let's see just how good this team is. Let's see what this team is made of, going on the road in some tough environments, playing some other tough teams in Baltimore, and I'm not going to sit here and say that they're doomed or anything like that. I don't know. There's a lot of unknown. We know there are clear question marks on this team, so let's see how it translates. Most teams in the NFL have some question marks to remind everyone. So as much as you might be fretting over the pass rush or injuries in the secondary, or maybe you're still not terribly confident in the interior offensive line, whatever it might be, whatever issue you want to point to, every other team in this league has a couple things like that. So this is where you find out a little bit more. But I mentioned in one of our previous conversations, when you do have Lamar Jackson and his unique skill set, I think it gives you, I don't know if it's an advantage because, I mean, Lamar, we've seen him struggle in games. He didn't play well in Pittsburgh. He didn't play particularly well in Kansas City until late in the game. But it is something different. It's something unique. It's a headache for other teams to prepare for. But I think it's something that gives you a chance with any team you play. Now, you're going to lose some of those games, but it's something different. So when you look at the schedule, and I mean, let's just go down the list. At Seattle, it's going to be difficult. Home against New England. At Cincinnati, okay, the Bengals are winless, but, well, the Ravens beat them by one possession in Baltimore.
And they'll have A.J. Green back by then. And hopefully we'll have Jimmy Smith back by then.
Oh,
right?
And I'll give you another one. They're going to be coming off of their bye at that point, and we know how that typically works around the league. So that's something to keep in mind. So, and that's the cupcake on the schedule over the next 2 months. And we just presented an argument for why that game could be problematic. But then you come home against Houston. The Texans have looked excellent. Deshaun Watson has played like an MVP candidate. They go to Los Angeles for Monday Night Football. I mean, the Rams, that offense is certainly not firing on all cylinders the way it has in the past. So that is interesting, but still a really tough trip there.
That's fascinating, right? The whole McVay thing, like you go from genius to you can't throw for 100 yards at home. I mean,
Yeah.
that was really weird to see the San Francisco 49ers come into the LA Memorial Coliseum and kick the Rams around in those helmets. You know, it had that my dad 1965 look to it, right? Like, and I think these throwbacks, I don't know what the hell the Jets are doing on their heads, by the way. I don't, they look like green pearls to me. But, yeah, the 49ers, watching them play now 2 weeks in a row, because I watched a lot of Monday, and to see them do that on the road on short rest, that's impressive. And that worries me about them getting on a plane and coming here. And it also worries me that game's going to get flexed.
Well, that's something I hadn't even thought of until you just mentioned that. But, yeah, that's a distinct possibility when you're talking about a matchup like that. But, you look at the 49ers, I mean, that defense. And you mentioned the Rams and talking about McVay and that offense. That's going to be the challenge for the Ravens over the next couple years. I mean, teams are going to, especially divisional opponents. I mean, if you're talking about the defensive coaching staffs right now of Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and clearly the Bengals haven't figured it out. That much is very obvious. And Cleveland, Cincinnati, and Pittsburgh, the three AFC North teams. Any other team like New England or Kansas City, any team that fancies himself a contender in this conference, they're figuring out. Now, it might not be their top priority unless they're playing the Ravens that week, but all those teams that are trying to be winners here in this conference are looking at a guy like Lamar Jackson and saying, what exactly do we do to slow this? And we've seen some teams have some success doing that. We've seen some teams take away the edges and try to keep him in the pocket, although that usually keeps you susceptible inside to the run, and we've seen Mark Ingram have big days like that. We've seen teams take away the deep ball against Marquise Brown and how the Ravens have had to adjust there, and we haven't seen as explosive of a passing game since then. But that's kind of the target that's on your back, and that's something the Ravens are going to have to deal with, and Lamar Jackson's going to have to deal with. But getting back to the schedule, I mean, it's tough. I mean, after San Francisco, at Buffalo, I think the Bills are another team that you're still trying to figure out just how good, but their defense has played really, really well. And even that loss to New England that they had, their defense played pretty well in that game. So, that game is not a sure thing. And we mentioned the Bengals. Well, the Jets, they just got off the schneid finally. They win their first game. They were 0-4.
Well, that kid can play, right? I mean, there's a part of that. If you're C.J. Mosley and you signed up for that the next couple of years, I think the quarterback's a real player, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a chance for that. I think there's a chance in the same way you don't want to anoint him. I think everyone's finding out with Baker Mayfield, who has really struggled, and I don't think Mayfield's a bust or is doomed either. But it's tough to play quarterback in this league.
I think it's really tough to play when you're hurt. Watching Mahomes try to do it, watching Cam Newton try to do it, watching Andrew Luck try. And we were talking about the best of the best now. Baker Mayfield, first pick in the draft. When you're not healthy, Joe Flacco, it's really difficult to do that. Really, really difficult, which really speaks to Tom Brady and the TB12, and I'll get into that 2 weeks from now. I need a bye week before I start talking about.
You need to amp up for that one.
I need to work myself into the Guerrero methods, and I'm going to do a little bit of research on that during bye week because I am fascinated, because I just turned 42. That. And pliability and all the things that I believe in, right? I mean, you see me on a yoga mat, you've seen DDP, you've seen all that stuff, right? That I really do believe there is a massive difference in doing that healthy and not doing it healthy, because I don't think you can do it not healthy. I think the days of, watching Burt Jones try to do it in 1978 with cracked ribs, those days have come and gone. You're only going to see semi-healthy quarterbacks out there because I don't think they perform well when I don't think you can go out there with one leg and win, and Pat Mahomes would be example one.
Yeah, I think you can maybe do it for a game at a time, but if you have something that's lingering, I think it makes it really, really tough. And I think, it's too difficult to win in this league consistently if you're not at 100%.
Which, by the way, Phillip Rivers, man, that thing he's got going on, I can't say that I'm honestly aware of it. That because the Chargers stink and they're there and they don't even know where they're playing, and I was out there. I really didn't know that he's this Cal Ripken. It didn't occur to me. Maybe I heard it a year or two ago or something, but they made a big deal about it on Sunday night. That's really kind of an incredible thing. Him, Favre, anybody that can do that.
Oh, it's incredible, and it does speak to. And we're talking about some individuals in a Phillip Rivers, for example, who grew up and played early in his career without quite as many safeguards for the quarterback. Now, he didn't play in the 1970s. I want to make it.
But you
clear.
can find some video of him getting his head taken off by Vontaze Perfect or somebody, right?
You can find something from 2005, 2006, 2007 that today people would be appalled to see. And you'd have guys getting suspended for. So, that it is impressive in that way. But, it's tough to win in this league. And as much as teams love to say next man up and we got guys who have depth and guys are going to step up, it's really tough to win in this league when you're not healthy. And the Chargers are a perfect example of that. Now, last year, they were able to somehow be a 12-4 football team despite the injuries they had. This year, they've had injuries once again, and not working out nearly as well for them, is it? So I think it just really speaks to how much this game is about survival and enduring as much as it is, hey, let's go out and play our absolute best football.
Dude, nobody's looking at the Ravens right now and being like, wow, look at the Ravens. Hey, man, they're 4-2, and I see a bunch of teams that aren't. You want to ask how hard it is to be 4-2? Go ask the Broncos. Go ask the Steelers right now. Go ask the Chargers how hard it is to be 4-2 right now, or how fortunate or lucky or which way the ball bounces. Or, the Ravens are 4-2 right now. Do I think they're world beaters? No. Do I think they can go into New England and win a game in January? I'll let you know that in December. Because part of that's going to be, how's Lamar feeling? And I don't know that I like Lamar seeking contact. I don't know how many times he got hit or hit the ground on Sunday, but I have a feeling Lamar is as sore right this moment as he has been at any point in the last 10 months, and probably a different kind of sore, an NFL game sore, because he really did skate for a couple of weeks. He was skilling around and throwing the ball and not running so much and getting out of bounds and seeking the sidelines. Now he's doing this. I'm going to stop in the middle of the field. I'm going to run around until I get hit. Yeah. Not a good idea. Not a good idea.
Yeah, he definitely took a few more hits on Sunday than you'd like to see. I don't think there's any question about that. We've talked about his elusiveness. We've talked about how he seems to have the kind of body control to avoid more of the big hits. But all it takes is one, right? That's
every
really...
skier says they have, they can land until they don't, literally.
So, and there's probably a little bit of, I don't know if bravado is the right word, but I think there's...
Well, I don't think he's ever had his head taken off, right? Literally,
I think
right?
There's probably, and Robert Griffin III has spoken about this at different times, probably a little bit of being naive to think, oh, that's not going to happen to me. I can avoid contact. Well, all it takes is the one guy that you don't see coming, and you just get walloped.
I go to the Rush song. We're only immortal for a limited time.
Sure.
Literally, right?
But that's where I also point and say, hey, he's got a QB rating, a passer rating in the high 90s, and he's on pace to throw for 4,000 yards. And 5 months ago, we wouldn't have even fathomed that possibility. So it speaks to the growth that we're seeing. Now, he's not Drew Brees yet or Tom Brady yet, and may never become that kind of passing quarterback, but he's showing that he can make plays. And even though Sunday, let's face it, he wasn't. There were so many guys streaking wide open that he didn't necessarily have to make a lot of difficult throws. But for the most part, maybe the Willie Snead incompletion aside down the field, for the most part, he made those throws. So that's all about this. This is a moving target, and it's a moving target every week depending on how defenses are going to approach you. Are they going to try to take away Mark Ingram in the between the tackle runs, or are they going to try to keep Lamar Jackson in the pocket, and then you gash him between the tackles? Or what are they going to do as far as the passing game goes? So it really is, if there's something about this offense, as much as we kind of poked fun at John Harbaugh with the revolution comments, and look, it's not as though their offense is doing anything that's that revolutionary in terms of how it looks, but I think there is the element of forcing teams to make a very clear-cut decision on how you're going to try to play the Ravens' offense. I mean, what are you going to do in terms of which runs you're going to try to take away? So I think the team that figures out a way to take away both, and I think really that comes down to having some really special personnel on your defense. Those are going to be the teams that have the ticket to really beating the Ravens and probably controlling the Ravens. So, but in the meantime, I think for as much as we talk about all these different games and we can run down the final 10 games on this schedule, and you can make arguments for the Ravens winning any of those 10 games, or let's say most of those 10 games, and you could probably make some kind of argument, some better than others, of the Ravens losing any of those 10 games that remain. So, hey, that's fun. I'd much rather not know how it's going to turn out. That makes it for much better dialogue. That makes for much better entertainment. So I think it's clear this team has some concerns, some issues that I'm not convinced they're going to be even able to fix in season. But they've got plenty going for them as well, and it kind of starts with not a very good division that they're playing in, and taking advantage of that.
Little nip in the air as we head out to Seattle. I will be in Seattle all weekend long. If you're heading out that way, you can find me out on Facebook and Twitter and LinkedIn and all those places. While there's a little nip in the air, I want to remind everybody, Compass Point, the leaves are changing perhaps 36 holes close to home. And the good news is Robert Kennedy is going to be joining us each and every week to talk some local hoops. All of it brought to you by our friends at Compass Point, where the golf course is open, night golf, the turkey shoot coming up next month. They're still drinking beer out there. Poor Robert's still watching the Redskins. Made him happy on Sunday. We'll have him on. It's Buckets and Birds, and it's Compass Point Golf down in Pasadena. King Discount Liquors, whether the Ravens win or lose. And I gave the King a ring. It's stout season for me. Anybody knows me knows I love me a stout. So I get all the stouts in. King Discount Liquors, lottery beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore. And I'm in the new commercials too. So it's a Balls commercial, if that means anything, dating back to the sports bar in the early 90s. Don't forget our friends in Essex as well. Pizza John's, 51 years, just like me. Back River Neck Road, my wife's favorite pizza. Don't sleep on those cheesesteaks and the ravioli as well. I owe them an event. I got to get back down there. We took Dutch Rupersberger over there to kick off Baltimore Positive back in the spring. I'm going to be unleashing a torrent of Baltimore Positive on you during bye week. If you're negative about Baltimore, you're going to hate WNST next week, because Pizza John's been doing it for 50 years, and we kicked it all off over on the east side of Baltimore Positive. Now 85 episodes in, but it all started with Dutch Rupersberger at Pizza John's. He loves. That was his idea, by the way. we gave him a list. He said, yeah, I like Pizza John's. Let's do it over there. Okay, we had some pepperoni pizza. So Dutch kept it simple. Whether it's Nancy Grasmick or Freeman Rabowski or John Sarbanes or Ben Carden or Jack Young or Brandon Scott or Sarah Heminger or Matt Gallagher, all of it's at Baltimore Positive. I'm asking everyone to go check it all out. But I do appreciate Pizza John's. And we do owe them an event. We'll be doing that sometime in November to get everyone out for how about a pizza eating party? Why, that's never a bad idea. Al Seafood. Been getting crabs and crab cakes there since the 1970s. The oldest crab house in Baltimore, remodeled, renovated. Robert Irvine. Go see Chad the Crab Man at Al Seafood, my pal. And take home a six-pack from there as well. I was over at Amici's the other night. Just want to give them some love because I do have a meatball left for my birthday. I have a leftover birthday meatball from Amici's. That's better than a fresh meatball from anywhere else. I'll tell you that right now. Best marinara sauce on earth. Get down to High Street. Amici's there for my birthday. People ask me to do that. Luke, for you with the rest of the league, and you talk about the NFC and where the emerging teams are. Boy, Garoppolo, Deshaun Watson, right? I mean, we are not talking about Cam Newton and Andrew Luck, are we, right? Like, when it comes to quarterbacks, there's, the Breeze, Brady, Rivers group, but this emerging group, and I mentioned Darnold earlier in this thing, and, we've seen guys, the Josh Rosen's getting benched, and Ryan Tannehill comes out from mothballs before it's all over with. Injured quarterbacks are giving way for other opportunities. You're seeing Kyler Murray run around now and try to make some noise. It's still a quarterback's league, and the Garoppolo thing to me is as fascinating as anything, because I do remember Matt Castle having some early success, but boy, Bill Belichick doesn't let the next quarterback out of his place often, does he?
Yeah, although I'll say this, Nestor, I haven't been that terribly impressed with Jimmy Garoppolo. I think, hey, they're undefeated. I'm giving the 49ers a ton of credit, but I don't think Jimmy Garoppolo is the reason why they're undefeated. I think he's been more game manager than anything else.
Well, when you have a defense like that, I mean,
yeah, exactly. I mean, my point is, I think, hypothetically, I think some other quarterbacks that people don't think too highly of or as highly of would be doing just as well.
Joe Flacco would be 5-0 there?
Quite possibly with that defense,
Fair enough.
maybe.
Fair enough.
It really. I think Lamar Jackson would definitely be 5-0. They'd be hands down the best team in the
a defense
NFL.
Designed by John Lynch. Maybe he'll get in the Hall of Fame after all.
Yeah, but I'll say this. I mean that I think, even though they didn't run the ball particularly well against the Rams, I think that running game, and they're missing Kyle Juszczyk right now, which if you watch Monday Night Football against Cleveland, Booger McFarland thinks Kyle Juszczyk is an MVP candidate, which I don't know if I'd go that far. But it does speak to what Shanahan's been able to do from a coaching standpoint. I think you've seen their running game kind of lead the way for their offense. And I want to be clear, I'm not saying Garoppolo is bad. I just think that's a really good situation for a quarterback that hasn't played a whole lot, quite frankly. That defense reminds you a little bit of what San Francisco had 7-8 years ago with Patrick Willis and company. So I think that's been a big surprise. Now, I'll say this much because I need to be fair, because I've been talking about this in terms of the Ravens. You look at San Francisco right now, their strength of schedule has been a joke. I mean, they haven't had a terribly difficult schedule. They've taken full advantage of it in the same way the Patriots have in the AFC, but they're still not a team.
I mean, I don't know. I believe the Browns and the Rams are good teams. They're plus teams to me. You beat 131-3, and you go into LA. I don't know. I'll buy the strength of schedule thing until they're bye, but the last 2 weeks for me, I'm not saying they're a paper 5-0 team, but they feel like a better team, let's say the Bills from a couple of weeks ago. And the Bills have played okay. I'm much more leery of the 49ers, especially the way they do play defense. And you talk about their strength of schedule, they're going to go play the Redskins and the Panthers and the Cardinals. They better be 8-0. I mean, literally, right? I mean, they're going to be a real chunky team by the time they get here.
Sure. And again, I was just saying that there's a little bit of unknown as far as whether they're truly a juggernaut or they're just, hey, playoff contender, playoff team, maybe win that division, although I think Seattle's going to have plenty to say about that before it's all said and done. And I'm not burying the Rams just yet, despite how they looked. But, yeah, I mean, they've been a surprise. And I think it does speak to building a roster and Garoppolo finally being healthy. And I think Kyle Shanahan's a pretty darn good coach. I mean, I really do. I think I'll say this. I think he can really coach offense in this league, and I think you look at the Atlanta Falcons. Kyle Shanahan was their offensive coordinator. They're in the Super Bowl. Since then, their defense hasn't gotten any better, and their offense is a shell of what it used to be, despite having Matt Ryan and Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley and looking on paper like they should still be a really good offense, and it hasn't been that way. So coaching does matter, and I think you give...
Well, the only time the Cleveland Browns ever moved the football, right, was the Pettin year that he was the OC, right? Like, they were really good that year.
Yeah, and I mean, it matters. Yes, you need talent. I mean, everyone understands that, but that doesn't mean coaching isn't important, and that's where I think I go back to a point I made a little bit earlier in the segment. You look at the Ravens, and for all the question marks they have and bringing guys in off street free agents who are playing meaningful snaps, I think you do look at the coaching staff with John Harbaugh at the top, that there is a sense of stability and enduring and trying to be the absolute best you can be. Now, what that ultimately means at the end of the season, we'll find out. But I'll say this much. The Ravens would, the Cowboys go into New York and lose to a winless Jets team. The Chargers, playing against a third-string quarterback and a one-win Pittsburgh team, didn't just lose. They got their butts kicked. I mean, that was a demolition.
Well, it was a home game for the Steelers, too, so there's that going on, too.
So as much as we can kind of look at the Ravens and say, okay, they haven't played anyone, and that's fine. I mean, I've said that, but they'd prefer still winning those games than going into the Jets and losing against a winless football team, or playing the Steelers at home rather than on the road even and not just losing, but getting blown out. So it does really speak to enduring in this league and surviving in this league as much as anything else. And it's very rare that a team plays its best football for 16 games or anywhere close to that. We've seen that firsthand here in Baltimore. 2000 Ravens, 5 straight games without scoring a touchdown. 2012 Ravens, 3-game losing streak in December. You go through that. You have times in the season where you're not playing very well, but can you minimize those downtimes? Can you minimize that negative? And when you get to the point where you are starting to click, can you take full advantage of that? And that's where the Ravens are. They've done enough to keep themselves in position in that regard, understanding that, they have to play better. They can't give up a kick return to open the game. You do that on the road against Seattle, or you do that against a team like Houston, you're probably putting yourself in really good position to be beaten then. But you clean up those mistakes, and you continue to get better in some of the areas in which they're concerned right now.
But look at the turmoil around the league, though, and other places, right?
You just quiet that noise as much as you can. And
Atlanta's going to fire their coach. Washington just did. Miami's a joke, right? Kansas City's got a limpy quarterback. Cleveland has stunk for 2 weeks, right? New Orleans is playing with Teddy Bridgewater and winning. Jacksonville's playing with all their starters and and losing. It's Pittsburgh's winning games on the road with Devlin Hodges. You know what I mean? It's a crazy league. It really is.
It is.
Sam Darnold had mono and apparently didn't even make out with anybody,
And the Jets look like a totally different team with him back on the field. So you never really know. It's a crazy, weird, week-to-week league.
Kyle Allen's winning football games in London, right? Literally.
Yeah, and it sounds so cliche, and I kind of, the whole a win is a win thing, first of all, we can't just sit here and say that for 30 minutes. We have to get into the meat of the defense, the offense, whatever other issue we're talking about with this football team. But at the end of the day, there is still something really important to that in saying, hey, this isn't college football where it's Alabama facing an FCS team and winning by 6 touchdowns. Miami, what we saw in week 1, you don't see that. And I said at that point, I'll bet you right now the Ravens won't come close to matching that point total the rest of the year, and they might not do that for years. That's how rare that was. So it really is a case of sometimes, some weeks, just do what you're supposed to do, even if it doesn't look great. And that's what the Ravens did Sunday. It wasn't an overly impressive performance, but they beat a team that they were supposed to beat. And you'll take it, and you move on, and you say, that needs to be better, and this was kind of ugly, and they had too many penalties, and their special teams were rough. And you say, but hey, they got the win. You move on. They didn't stub their toe in a way like the Cowboys did or the Chargers did Sunday, and you just add that win to your total, and you move forward to the next week's challenge. It sounds kind of wishy-washy saying that, but sometimes it really is that simple. And I think with the Ravens, that's now when you really get into the meat of the schedule, we're not going to be talking about style points at all anymore. It's going to be, hey, did you win or you lose? And some of these games that they're going to lose, what came out of that? Was there something that you can take out of that was a positive and apply it to the next week's game? So that's really where it is. It's always a moving target, and we always say that you're never as good as when you play your best game. That's not truly indicative of who you are. I think we found that out, that the Ravens aren't the team that blew out the Dolphins 59-10. That's not their true talent level. And on the flip side, I think I would think most people would recognize that how they played against Cleveland isn't as bad as they truly are either. So it's somewhere in the middle there, and you hope when you get to December, you have a chance to prove that you're closer to being that first team, that closer to being that team in week 1 that we saw that had everyone so excited, except understanding you're going to be playing much tougher competition.
Yeah, well, some weeks you got to play the A team, and this is
exactly.
Some weeks you got to get on the plane and go out to Seattle, and some weeks Tom Brady comes to town and you get to sell tickets and hopefully fill the stadium instead of have it half empty the way it was over the weekend. Luke can be found out in Owings Mills. Doing all things Ravens all week long. Any breaking news you get first on the WNST Tech Service. That's all brought to you by our friends at Coons Ford, Security Boulevard. And, of course, Dennis Colatzos will be here from 3 until 5 on Thursday. I'll be joining him. Luke will be joining him. I'm out in Seattle this weekend. We got Baltimore Positive coming your way for the bye week. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our friends at Costas Inn. Good enough for the Today Show. The fat crabs, the crab cakes. And I've been like Jones and the Crab Imperial lately. Don't ask me why, but I've been getting the Crab Imperial. I haven't done that since like the 80s, but I love Crab Imperial lately. Pit Beef Bands, real East Side hospitality. Say hi to Nick and Pete over at Costas Inn. Charles Newsonoff and Sons took care of my wife's wedding ring. I don't know what she did. She sort of caught it, and it sort of like, I don't know, became all disheveled. Sydney said, bring it over. We'll take care of it. That's what they do. Jewelry, watches, engagement rings, custom designs, and they can fix your wife's wedding ring because they did it for me. 410-661-5050. Find them at charlesnewsonoff.com. You hear the commercials here. I like when Sydney does the commercials. We should have Sydney and I do one together. We're going to do that soon. Sid, coming to you soon. I'm coming over. Make room. G&A, Coney Island hot dogs, legendary. So legendary, Guy Fieri knows about them. I knew about him in 79. Guy Fieri didn't find him until like 2012, but that's okay. As long as you find him. Say hello to Andy. They're always open for breakfast as well. Beef brisket, burgers right in the window. And if you get like multiple hot dogs, Andy will line them up on his arm for you. Chili, cheese, ketchup, relish, never mustard for me, but you can have it however you want. Have it your way. It's G&A Coney Island hot dogs. Find them at GNArestaurant.com. Also, much love to our friends at Strategic Factory, creating your masterpiece. Don't tell Don Moeller, but I got some Baltimore Positive swag coming from Strategic Factory, so you know it's going to look good. Marketing, printing, promotional goods of all kinds, all in one shop in Owings Mills. Let them help you promote your business and your brand the way they're helping me. It's all togetherness. Strategic Factory. I am Nestor. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.